I didn't plan it this way, but somehow last month I was able to get 2 ultra rare platinum trophies. So I'm going to tell you exactly how it is that I did that. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Blink, and I post videos here about trophy hunting and game collecting and just games in general. So if that's something you're into, feel free to stick around. As part of the trophy hunting side, though, I do a monthly sort of trophy log journal update video where I show you all the trophies that I earned in the previous month, in this case in the month of July 2024. And we talk through what the easiest ones were, what the hardest ones were, how I felt about the games, all sorts of stuff to give you a sense of, month in the life of a trophy hunter. And some general game opinions along the way. So with that, let's just jump right into it. We're going to hop over into my PSN Profiles account. As I always mention up top, this is using a dark mode filter that's not native to the site, but it is native to Google Chrome, or it's an extension to Google Chrome, and so makes it a little easier on your eyes. Never say I didn't do anything for you. I'm happy to help you out. But you can see where we left off last month, actually, June 2024, June 20th. So I had almost 10 days in June where I didn't do anything. When I last chatted with you all, I was working on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. And that continued on. As you can see, I was able to knock out all the rest of them and ultimately unlock that platinum. So I would say when I stopped in June, I had a lot of the more challenging trophies left. I think the ones that stop people from getting the platinum. You can see 5.7% of people, 3.8, 2.85. So let's talk through what these ones were. First up, complete all gap collections. This one, I would say this one is not too bad. When I was younger playing Tony Hawk 2, because I think gaps weren't introduced until Tony Hawk 2, and then they added them to Tony Hawk 1. Is that right? Well, the gap list, I think, was introduced in Tony Hawk 2. Gaps themselves existed in Tony Hawk 1. That might be completely wrong, but either way. I always remember thinking that this would be like an impossible task to accomplish, that there was just way, way, way too many gaps to ever go in and get, and that I would never be able to actually do it. It would be way too tedious. But in reality, the gap list for most levels is pretty reasonable. I'd say a lot of the levels have, especially in Tony Hawk 1, have maybe 20 gaps or so, and almost all of them are pretty easy. Tony Hawk 2 levels have a few more gaps, maybe more like 30 per level. But again, a lot of them are pretty easy. If you've already played through the game a couple times to do some of the other trophies, like the Legend collection, you've probably earned over half of the gaps as it is. So it's just a matter of looking up a video of the ones that you're missing. They tell you the names of the ones that you're missing and going and get those knocked out. It only took me a little while. Now, there were 2 gaps that really gave me trouble. One in particular, I wish I could remember their names, but they're both on the Skate Heaven level, which is like one of the unlockable levels at the very end of the game. One of them, you had to do this jump off of a box onto a railing and then grind on that railing and then jump off onto a bench. That one was hard because it was hard to get the right angle and enough kind of momentum to propel yourself to that initial railing. Once you hit the railing, I think I got the bench part of it first try, but getting to that railing really took some time. That's one of those gaps that definitely other people have had problems with too. If you look up videos on YouTube, that's one of the videos, or one of the gaps where there are like specific tutorials and advice on how to do it, because it's a little bit finicky. The other one that gave me a ton of trouble, and I don't know if it's just me or what, but it was a pretty simple gap. It's just this grind down onto this small ramp, and you jump over, like there's a void in that level where there's just nothing below you, and you have to land on this little concrete sidewalk square, which is right next to kind of like a warp portal, which none of this sounds like I'm talking about Tony Hawk, but if you played the Skate Heaven level in particular, you know what I'm talking about. You had to land on that, and for whatever reason, I could not do it. I was getting too much height and not enough distance. I was always just barely missing that sidewalk square. Every now and again, I would like, the tip of my board would just barely nick it, but I wouldn't have enough to land on it. Oh, it was brutal. I probably tried that one alone for maybe an hour. Like, I don't know why it took me so much time, but it was not easy. But we cleaned that one up. Then you have to do all the hard get theirs. I would say this is probably my favorite part of going for the platinum. And this is a really good example of how trophies benefit you. So A get there, if you're not familiar with it, a get there is just like, basically it's a string of gaps. So if a gap is, you know, giving you extra points for traveling from one place to another, or manualing in a certain spot, or grinding a certain rail, a get there is giving you bonus points for getting multiple gaps without breaking a combo. And the hard get theirs are kind of like pro level combo strings that you have to do. Some of them take you across almost entire levels. And it was really fun to at this point be good enough to feel like I could accomplish those and to grind out and get them. There are a couple in particular that are really brutal, that take a lot of effort. One that people have a lot of trouble with is the mall. Thankfully, I got the mall pretty much right away. I don't know if I got lucky or if it's just because that's a level that I used to play a lot as a kid. But the two that really threw me off, one is the School 2, which is one of the first levels in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. You have to do this, like, basically you have to do all of the rail call, or the roll call rails, which is an objective that you've already done earlier in the game, but you have to do them all in one big combo. And it basically requires you to, like, grind and manual all the way across the level, and then all the way back across the level, and then because you have to approach the last rail from a specific angle, you also have to, like, manual all the way across the level, do like a wall hop or hit a ramp, and then go back the way you were just coming from. So it's like 2.5 trips across the level. Really, really tough. Not an easy one at all. And then the last one that took me a while to get was Bull Ring, which is one of the last levels in Tony Hawk 2. It's the last, like, competition level. And that one was just one that was tricky. You had to do a lot of, like, specific different, like, manuals and grinds around different places. You have to wall hop off, like, this little metal piece on the back of a half pipe. And then after you've done it all, you have to successfully jump up into the rafters, which is really easy to overshoot or mess up or undershoot and not get it. So these took me probably a day of trying, of going for, but I would say this is one of my favorite parts of doing the Platinum Trophy. I really liked my time with it, and I would actually highly recommend people, even if you're not going to go for the Platinum, try to go for this trophy. You know, it's a reasonable ultra rare that's a lot of fun to work towards. Then you have to do 50 letters in Horse. This is a multiplayer mode that is not available online for some reason. You can only play Horse local multiplayer, which just means that I had to have 2 controllers and knock it out. Didn't really take much effort. And then the big sort of barrier, the reason most people don't have this, is reach career level 100. It is ridiculous that this trophy is in the game. An example of effort that is not worth doing, but here I am, I've done it, so I'll explain it to you. You will naturally level up as you play through, you do all the other challenges, you know, you do the Legend Challenge Collection, all that stuff. By the time you're done with basically all the other trophies, you're probably going to be level about 70 or so. And so you just have to farm regular experience, which you get from finishing levels with a high combo or a high point total, which we'll stick a pin in. We'll talk about that in a minute. And earn the rest of your EXP that way. Now, you can keep playing through the campaign, like, over and over and over again, and each skater has a unique set of challenges, so you can unlock experience that way. But it's a lot less time efficient, and by the time you get to this point, you've already played through the campaign with at least 3 other skaters, so you're maybe not so much in the mood to do that. Although it still probably would have been preferable to this. And so what you end up having to do is you will enable all of the sort of assist options, so you can't, you know, bail and score, and your points are worth like 1.5 times the amount and stuff. And just pick a particular level, and your goal is to do a combo that gets you 1 million points in a single combo. If you do that, you will get 150 experience for getting a score of over 1 million, and you'll get another 150 experience for getting a combo over 1 million. That'll give you 300 experience, and then you just restart the level, do that combo again. Once you get good at, like, you know, knocking out the special tricks and you get the rhythm of it, you're usually being able to get that combo in about 10 seconds, which sounds ridiculous, but I assure you, you'll be able to get there. And then it just becomes muscle memory at that point. You just have to do it over and over and over again. I think it was probably about 5 hours of grinding that out. And so what I ended up doing is, you get to the point where you don't even really need to look at the screen anymore. You just kind of, like, know the audio cues and you know the right sort of like rhythm of inputs to press to do your special tricks to get the points, and then press start, down, down, end run, start the next run, go again. And so I had YouTube videos up, I was watching like other content creators, video essayists and stuff like that. I was watching their videos off on another TV while I was just sort of doing this idly. So it wasn't that bad in terms of entertainment. I just wasn't like actively playing the game, but it is ridiculous that they have this in here when you just aren't anywhere near it naturally. And when I say you're at level 70, that sounds decent, like, oh, you're almost 3/4 of the way done by the time you even have to start the grind. But the problem is that the levels the amount of experience per level is exponential or increases at least linearly. And so levels to go from like level 90 to 91 is probably the same amount of experience that it took to get to like from level like 1 to 20. It really slows down a lot. It takes like 10,000 experience per level. So super not worth it. I was actually not sure if I was going to go for this platinum because of this trophy, but I was having so much fun revisiting Tony Hawk 1 and 2, and I had done everything else that I was like, I'm only one trophy away, I'll just do it. And so on the 4th of July, at bedtime basically, at almost midnight for me, I unlocked my first ultra rare platinum trophy of July. And then I moved on and played a game that I never had the chance to play before, and that is the original Quake. So there's an excellent remaster of this game done by Night Dive Studios. It's beautiful. It runs at 120 FPS on PS5. It's silky smooth. It looks gorgeous. And they released a physical edition of it through Limited Run Games. I picked up that physical edition, and for a separate challenge that I'm doing as part of my podcast's community, we're doing like kind of a gaming bingo where you have to beat games that meet certain conditions that then fill in specific squares on a bingo board. One of the squares was beat a game in the Quake franchise, and I said, well, heck, let's start with the original Quake. Let's do that. So I went ahead and I started it up. Now, to actually get the platinum, you basically have to play through the main Quake campaign, and you have to play through, I think, 4 sub-campaigns or like expansion campaigns, and you have to do them all on Nightmare difficulty, which sounds pretty brutal, and it can be pretty dang tough, but thankfully this game has quick save and quick load anywhere you want. If you press pause and then R1, that'll quick save, and then pause and L1 will quick load. And so anytime you get through like a particular fight that was kind of rough, you can quick save and you'll never have to worry about doing it again. So you're not really having to replay levels a lot. You're just having to like fight your way through and make incremental inch by inch progress. And so, I played through everything. I beat the first episode. If we move along, you'll see I start getting trophies for finishing all the other episodes. And then I, on the 9th, completed the actual game on Nightmare difficulty. And then you have to do some other bonus trophies that are really not too difficult. This deathmatch one is one that you can do really quickly on like a bot-assisted match, so that takes almost no time at all. Beat the first level without firing a shot. That's really not that difficult. You also have to find all the secret exits. So Quake is split up into campaigns just like Doom is. So there's episodes and maps, right? So if we look at complete E4 M6, that means complete episode 4 map 6, which is named the Pain Maze, without taking damage. So each episode, so each group of levels has one secret exit that you can find hidden in one of the maps that will take you to a bonus stage. So you just have to be aware of when you're on the map that has a secret level and then go find it. You get the trophy as soon as you enter the secret level, so it's really not too bad at all as long as you know what you're looking for. And then you have to play through these side campaigns. So the first one is Scourge of Armagon. I believe Scourge of Armagon was an actual campaign expansion released for Quake back in the day. I don't think it was done by the original developers, but I think it was a campaign expansion that was aimed at fleshing out the game a little bit more. That one's not too bad. Got to find a secret message. So there's a couple of miscellaneous ones and things as you go along. And then you have to do another campaign called Dissolution of Eternity. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, this is also a campaign that released back in the day. That's not going to be the case for all of these, but I want to say that this is the second one where that is the case. I would call all of these roughly equivalent in difficulty, but what I will note is that these later campaigns start to get rather long. Like each map gets rather long is what I mean. So when you're playing the main Quake campaign, it really excels on like tight, quick levels, and you can sort of represent that easily by the number of enemies on any given map. So when you pause Quake or when you finish a level, it shows you how many enemies you've beaten or killed out of all the enemies in the map. And usually the early levels have like, I'd say 50 to 80 monsters that exist somewhere on the map. But some of these later campaigns, it's like 140 enemies, and in some cases even more. So the levels are twice as long, which just makes them absolutely exhausting. And so it's not easy to power through sometimes, especially if you're doing all this back-to-back like I was. All right, let's take a sip of my coffee here. All right. Got a little tickle in my throat. So I played through all of Quake, and I played through those 2 campaigns. And then I took a little bit of a break and went back and started cleaning up Moss. And so Moss is a game I played back when it first came out on PSVR 1. I loved it, but I'd never gotten the platinum. This is one of the games that I called out at the start of the year as one of the 30 backlog games that I wanted to clean up. And I got the motivation and went back and decided to actually do it. So I did kind of the easy stuff first, as you'd expect me to. You know, I broke a bunch of objects. This one, you just have to, like, stall on a level, collected all the collectibles. That didn't take too long. The game is not very long, and this stuff is not hidden super well. And so a lot of this stuff I had already gotten on my first playthrough. I just had to jump into a couple of episodes, or a couple chapters, and clean stuff up. Do a couple miscellaneous ones. Oh, this one was definitely a little bit obnoxious. This destroy 2 or more Screecher enemies with a controlled ticker. So a ticker is an enemy that blows itself up and damages you and everything around it. And a Screecher is another particular type of enemy. There's only 2 spots in the entire game where these enemies spawn together, where 1 ticker and 2 Screechers can even be on the map. And one of them is at the very end of kind of a gauntlet of fights. And so and there's other enemies like shooting at you and stuff. And so you have to kill the right enemies, leave the right enemies alive, and then manipulate them all to stand really close together and get blown up. It took me a little longer than you'd expect that it would. But the other thing I did while I was cleaning this up, as you can see from this little plus symbol here, is I did the Twilight Garden trophies. So this is a DLC expansion for Moss. And I didn't even know that it came out, honestly. This came out in 2019, like a year or 2 after the game came out. And it's DLC, but it's cool the way that they do it. They've integrated the DLC directly into the game itself. And so as you're playing through the campaign, you'll find these new hidden like doors. And when you enter the door, you'll be able to go through a section of the Twilight Garden. And at the end of that section, you will get a new piece of armor or a new weapon that is both better to use, but also has new abilities that you didn't have access to before. And so you kind of have to play through the whole game and find all 3 of the doors as you go along in order to get the full experience of the DLC. And maybe some people would have been bummed by that, because when it first came out, they would have wanted to just go check out the DLC content. But for someone like me that was already going to be doing a new replay, it was awesome, because it added like a little bit of freshness to my experience. Plus, it'd been 5 years since I played the game, so I didn't remember all the details anyways. So I did all the Twilight Garden stuff, a bunch of miscellaneous things in there, got the armor, the sword, etc. And then we moved back, did a little more Quake. And so here you can see I finished Dimension of the Past and started on Dimension of the Machine. The Dimension maps are 2 new maps that were added as part of like Quake anniversaries that were developed by the original developer. And so these maps I think are a little bit better, a little more in the spirit of original Quake, or interesting variations. Like some of them are a little more tense. Your ammo is a little more restricted in these. So this was a really good time to go through these as well. Then I hopped back to Moss, did more of the DLC stuff. And then this is the big trophy that I think intimidates a lot of people, stops them from getting the Moss Platinum. And that is Rescue Argus without a single death, which is to say beat the entire game without ever dying. That said, this is a much scarier trophy than it seems. First of all, the game, when you know what to do, when you know the solutions to the puzzles, is only about an hour and a half long. And a good chunk of that is like unskippable dialogue sections. And so it's not that long of a playthrough at all. There's a lot of parts of the game where you can't even die. You know, if there's no enemies on screen and no endless pits, there's no way to die as it is. So it's really not until the very end of the game, kind of the last boss, which is really kind of like a run and hide section of the game where you're even going to have a chance to die. And that part is 100% consistent. If you move one way, the boss will always respond one way. So you just have to kind of, plan and master your route if you're going to get through that section alive. Plus, if you're fast enough, if you do die, you can like quickly, pause, close the game out, reopen it, and it won't count as a death if you anticipate that you're going to die. So I was able to do this basically first try. I actually did this alongside the DLC, which just goes to show how reasonable it is, right? So I was able to also do all the DLC stuff that I'd never experienced before, also without dying. So highly recommend folks go for this one if you're into Moss. It's not as bad as it seems, and it's a trophy you can be proud of having on your profile because a lot of people are scared off by it. And then for that, I got the platinum. So that was my second platinum, and we're halfway through July. Now I'm back here, and I'm just cleaning up the last of Quake. I finished the Dimension of the Machine on single player. The last boss of this campaign was really pretty brutal. I had to do a lot of saves and load on that. I can't imagine doing it in one shot on Nightmare. It would just absolutely not be a thing. And for that, I was rewarded with my third platinum trophy, which is the Quake Platinum Trophy, and my second ultra rare of July. Now, overall, would I recommend the Quake Platinum? 100%. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed my time in the game. Having never played it in the past, but having played Doom, I didn't know if it would feel a little crusty. But Quake holds up phenomenally well. And it's nice to play a game like Quake, which is it's straightforward. Like, it wears its intentions front and center, right? You are just running around these levels, strafing around these levels. You're just blam, 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 shooting. No reloading, no fancy mechanics, nothing like that. It's just very straightforward, kinetic, like direct feedback from eye to hand to game, and it feels really good to play something like that because we don't get games like that very much anymore. My one piece of advice for people that are considering this platinum is don't do like I did. Don't play every campaign over the course of like 10 days. That is too much Quake too fast. It took me about 40 hours to get this platinum over the course of 10 days, and by the end I was definitely like, by the time you're on your almost 100th map of Quake, you're like, all right, I kind of get it at this point. So you'll have more fun, I think, if you space it out over time. Do a campaign every couple of months, and you'll really be rewarded with a really good ultra rare platinum. Now, obviously, this has the potential to jump out of the ultra rare category, but it's still worth your time for sure. Then I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and so I started another Crab's Treasure and worked my way through that. I didn't get too far into the game. I only beat a handful of bosses and apparently fell to my death for the first time. I am going to go back to and finish this one off at some point. It's kind of on pause right now just because I got distracted by other stuff, both other platinums that I'm working on and other non-PlayStation games. But this is a really great Souls-like with a little bit of a sense of humor. When I first heard about the game, I assumed it'd be jankier than it was, but it really is like genuinely going for the Souls energy. And it's funny when you map that to the setting, right? Like the idea of these like crabs and pufferfish and stuff saying weird, cryptic, like nonsensical lines that mean almost nothing, or that, like, as they die, having like a raspy sort of final statement that they say. Very funny. So this is a really cool game. Definitely, if you're a Souls fan, check it out. And I do plan on going back to another Crab's Treasure for sure, because I like the systems that it has. You can swap your shell around, you have different magic, all sorts of stuff. It really makes it good. And it's a little more of a defensive game than a dodging game, which is neat. But the reason I got distracted is because I went back to work on another backlog project of mine, and that is Demon's Souls. So I played Demon's Souls back in the day on PS3. And then when I got my PS5, I of course got Demon's Souls on launch. And I played through it again, loved it again. It's been a game that I've loved for a long time. And I wasn't really going for the trophies at all. I wasn't really focusing on it. So I had kind of just naturally earned half the trophies from playing through the game the first time. And rather than try to like dust off that profile and figure out where I was and how to like continue on the trophies, I just started a new character. We started from scratch, and I followed the trophy guide as I went along and played through it for I think this is the 4th time total in my life that I've played through Demon's Souls. So I had to do a bunch of the miscellaneous trophies, vanquishing the Tower Knight without killing any of the archers around them. That really wasn't bad at all. Killing the Dragon God with a specific weapon. Just a lot of these like boss specific ones. There were some characters that I had never freed in my first playthrough, so I had to free them. And yeah, this is just me working my way through kind of the first half of Demon's Souls here over the course of a couple of days, cleaning up some of these easier boss trophies before I get into the more particular finicky stuff. But then I took a break from that. You can see how I jump around here when we look at it trophy by trophy, right? I get like halfway through a game and then I jump to another game and I jump back. But it's just how my brain works when I'm playing stuff. And sometimes I have kind of like a deadline for the podcasts that I'm working on too. And that was the case with Arranger. So I don't know how much spoilers there are for Arranger trophies. So I'm going to try to not scroll too far up. But Arranger is a new puzzle game. It just came out. It's actually kind of marketed as a role puzzling adventure. So half role playing, half puzzle game. In reality, it is much more of a puzzle game than it is a role-playing game. It has a little like Zelda energy to it, but not too terribly much. What you're really doing is you're moving around on this grid of tiles, and as you move, up or down or left or right, you will move the entire column or row of tiles alongside your character. And so your goal is to kind of like shift tiles around to navigate where you want to go in the world. But then you're on this sort of Zelda-ish adventure where you're going from town to town, you're going into dungeons, fighting bosses, things like that. So it really is quite neat. Really nice looking game. It has character designs from the artist that did Braid, if anybody's ever played Braid, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, I wanted to play this one for Indie Quest, my podcast about indie games, and check it out. All in all, there are some missable trophies in this. I'll actually jump to the very end here. This one here, found a kindred misfit. So that was a trophy that is missable, and it's actually missable before the point of no return. So most trophies aren't missable in the sense that there is a point of no return in this game, and the game tells you about it, like, hey, there's a point of no return. But there's actually kind of a soft point of no return before that, where there's one particular town that you ultimately end up having to escape from. And if you don't get the trophies in that town before you escape, even at the point of no return, you can't backtrack and go into that town again. At least not that I found a way to do. And so I had to end up replaying up to that point, which is about 2/3 of the way through the game, to get this missed trophy. Thankfully, you can skip most of the dialogue and cutscenes, and the game has an assist option that lets you skip the puzzles. So I played through the game, did all the puzzles the first time through. But when I was just replaying to get this one trophy, I turned on that option to skip all the puzzles, and you can jump back to basically any point in the game within 20 minutes. I shot through everything, dungeons, bosses, everything with that skip option, and got right back to where I needed to and got this one last trophy. I missed it just because I was playing this before there were any videos about the game, before there were any guides out there. I was kind of completely flying by the seat of my pants, only based on the trophy icon and the description, which is actually kind of a fun way to do it sometimes. But I just didn't figure out this one particular puzzle, and then ended up moving on, assuming I could go back, and then when I couldn't go back, I ultimately had to just do that replay. But all in all, I do recommend the game. It's pretty fun. If you like puzzle games, if you like block pushing, like Sokoban style puzzlers, this is a pretty enjoyable one. If you like stuff like Baba Is You or Patrick's Parabox, this is like a much easier, kind of more story focused version of something like that. So check it out. And really not a lot of people playing it as of yet. Only 110 people on PSNP, which is a shame. Then we're almost at the end of the month, and I'm just continuing to clean up a lot of the trophies, rescuing people, doing the side quests in Demon's Souls. So this is where we end. I got all the miracles and all the rings. So I want to talk about this for a little bit. The rings you pretty much just get from knowing where they all are. But the one thing I don't love about the Demon Souls Platinum, which is true of all Demon Souls Platinums, but I personally am not that big of a fan, is there's these two concepts known as character tendency and world tendency. And certain events or certain items or certain areas are only possible if you have either what's called all white or pure white world tendency slash character tendency, or pure black. You move locations towards pure white world tendency when you kill the bosses, and it moves back when you die in like your full human form. And so you really just have to kill yourself in the hub area and always play in soul form to get up to pure white. And then you have to basically, at some point, the trophy guide kind of guides you to do everything pure white and do all of the side quests there, and then move all of the levels and your character all the way to pure black. And it just makes me feel bad because you have to, like, to move to pure black, you end up having to go on like a murder spree and kill a bunch of harmless NPCs that did nothing wrong. And I just feel guilty. So I don't appreciate the game making me feel like a jerk. But I did what had to be done. We unlocked all the miracles and all the rings. And I really only have one trophy left, and that's to unlock all the spells. That's the only trophy that you can't get like really in one playthrough, because you have to spend certain boss souls to buy certain spells, and certain spells require, there's two different spells that might require the same boss soul. So you have to kind of do 1.5 playthroughs. You have to do all the stuff in one playthrough and then kill like 7 or 8 specific bosses in another playthrough. So that's what I still have left. That's what I'm working on right now. I'm sure that'll get wrapped up in August, probably here in the next day or two. And then I will finally have the Demon Souls 2020 Platinum, which will be my 3rd Souls Platinum. I have Elden Ring and I have Bloodborne as well. And this one is really one of the easier ones. It's not too bad at all. It's like a 25-30 hour platinum. There's nothing crazy, no ridiculous grinds. The PS3 version of this game is much worse in terms of grinds, because you have to do like specific weapons and stuff like that. But I may go back and do that one someday too. But yeah, really a fun game. Holds up super well. Glad to replaying it and revisiting it 4 years after I initially played it. So that's it. That's all of the trophies, all of the platinums, my ultra rares that I earned in July 2024. So let me know, what have you been working on in the last month? You know, what are some of the rarest trophies that you unlocked in July? You know, what games are you currently working towards the platinum on? And in general, yeah, thanks for hanging out this, half an hour long video. And if you enjoy what you saw here, you want to chat more about trophies, I'm always around. You can subscribe, come hang out, watch the next video, all that jazz. And with that, until next time, peace.